On today's episode of Uncommon Sense, we speak with Katie Rubalcaba, the founder of the Good Egg Fund and a Catholic entrepreneur and mother who runs many great faith initiatives. You won't want to miss this one. Stay tuned. Hello, viewers and listeners. Welcome back to another episode of Uncommon Sense. My name is Joe Grabowski. I'm one of the co-hosts here, and I'm joined, as always, by my wonderful co-host, Grettelyn Darkey. How are you, Grettelyn?
I'm great, Joe. Thanks for having me.
And as I mentioned in the intro, we're joined today by Mrs. Ruvi from, I guess that's one of your screen names that you go by, but you're the founder of something called the Good Egg Fund, which we definitely want to talk about today. But first, maybe just give us a little bit about you, about your background, and what leads you to do some of the work that you do.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. It's really exciting to meet all of you. I'm Katie. Most people call me Katie unless they first met me online, and then they call me Mrs. Ruvi. I spend a lot of my time on the internet, which is embarrassing for a mother of five. But I spent the last 5 years doing a cooking show on a website called Twitch, which is mostly known for video gaming. People play Fortnite a lot on there and stuff, but there's all sorts of other things going on Twitch. And for four and a half of the last 5 years, I was cooking my kids' dinner pretty much 3 nights a week. And oddly, this drew an audience that I didn't understand why anyone would ever want to watch a middle-aged woman cook dinner, but here we are. And this community of people grew online and then kind of spilled over into Twitter, and it became apparent because I am Catholic, but my cooking show was not Catholic. Like, it wasn't explicitly meant to be religious in any way. It's just that when you are, when you love Jesus, that sort of spills out a little bit. And so that kind of became I caught the attention of some people in the Catholic Twitter sphere. And so then we got a little bit more of a Catholic audience, but primarily the goal was just to provide a place online where people knew that they were loved and worthy of love. And because of that, I ended up growing this incredibly generous and kind community of people from all faith backgrounds or no faith background, who was extremely interested in helping others in the world. And from that, we got the Good Egg Fund.
Interesting. Well, could you tell us a little bit about the Good Egg Fund, if that's okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Good Egg Fund is a community-sourced, basically a grant giving fund that allows people to receive a grant of $500 or less in order to do good in their own communities. So the goal is not for you to take out a grant for yourself. Like, if you're struggling with your bills or something, we don't really grant those kinds of things. But if you know of someone else who needs help, or if you pass, a homeless guy on the street every single week and you think, gosh, that guy just really needs a new coat, I wish I had cash to buy it for him, you could go to goodeggfund.org and request a grant to be able to do that. We'll either buy the coat for you or reimburse you when you already have done it. The theory is that not having money should never be the reason that you don't help somebody out, and that the closest person to a problem is the best person to fix it. And so we like to kind of marry the groups of people who have money but don't know how or who to help with people who don't have money but have tons of people who need help. And so, from that, you get the Good Egg Fund.
I love that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful and as I mentioned in some of our email exchanges, very Chestertonian kind of idea. This, focusing on neighbors and, Chesterton had his whole economic philosophy, which he called distributism. We refer to now as localism, but really it's just an embodiment of the principle of subsidiarity, which is exactly what you just articulated, that somebody closest to the problem is in the best position, has the best knowledge, and the most feasible means of fixing it. So I was really attracted to it when I found it. For years, I used to participate in something called Kiva, and I don't even know if it's still around, but Kiva was another sort of micro loan thing. It worked a little differently. You would basically crowdfund loans for, people like, a goat farmer in Kazakhstan to buy a new goat or something like that. Mm-hmm. And you would just contribute your $25 and then they pay that micro loan back gradually. And then you just kind of keep the fund, the money you've invested there on the site, and go make another loan. It was really fun for a while to participate in that. But I love this microfinance idea. What else about its inspiration could you tell us? Because I mean, did you come up with the idea, or was it sort of a crowd-sourced notion that arose in this community that you're talking about?
Yeah. So what happened was within my online community while we were cooking, we would get to know the people who came into the channel kind of regularly. The same people were there every single time that I was streaming. And so we got to know them. We got to be part of a community with them. And one of the guys was recently divorced and he was really trying to find his feet after that and was about to lose his visitation rights with his kid because he didn't know how he was going to be able to pay his child support and also rent. And both were required in order for him to be able to pay or to see his child. They had to have a roof over their head and he had to be current on his child support. And so just as a community, we were like, hey, how much do you need to be able to get this done? And one of the things you can do on Twitch is to donate to a streamer. And by then I had built up trust with my community. So I was like, whatever you donate to me today, I'm going to pass along to this guy. I'm not going to give you his name, but this person that we all know in the community. And so that like within, I think it was 21 minutes, the guy needed $400 to pay his child support. And within 21 minutes, the chat had donated $400. And so I was able to just, as soon as I got offline, donate that to him. And then things like that kept coming up within that little community. You know, somebody had a kid who was sick and they don't have health insurance and it was going to cost $75 to go to the local, like minute clinic type thing. So that was super easy. 10 minutes, that was out the door. Like, and we were able to help out people with that. But at the end of that first year, I found that, I think it was something like $7,000 of the income that I had brought in on that channel had been given to other people. And somebody was like, you know, you should probably set that up as a nonprofit so you're not paying taxes on that. And I was like, oh, right, because I paid the taxes on it the first year. And so I'm like a weirdly self-sufficient human. And so I just like looked up, how do you start a nonprofit? What do you have to do? How do you make that work? And it's actually not that hard in the state that I live in. So that was pretty fantastic. And so we set up the Good Egg Fund and it became an official, you know, registered 501c3 in 2020. And so, is that right? Yeah. So we set up the website and I had to learn how to use Squarespace. But I figured it out eventually. It's not the greatest website in the world, but it gets the job done. And so we sort of formalized the process, how you reach out and get the grant instead of just coming into my chat. And we're all like, well, we don't really know you, so we're not going to help you. You know, it got a little bit more formalized. There's a contract sometimes you have to sign if I'm not familiar with you at all, where you promise not to sue us or do anything crazy if you get hurt in the process of doing your thing. But other than that, like, it's just super simple. And I think a lot of times people overcomplicate helping other people, that it's got to be like a 45-day process and somebody's got to give blood and whatnot. And it's just not that necessary.
Joe and I are both in development in the society, so we're in the business of getting grants so that we can keep doing what we do, and it can be a very complicated process sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, if you're getting a huge grant, I get it. But one of the things that was super cool this year, the Good Egg Fund actually received a grant. My husband applied through his job to get you get to submit your favorite nonprofit, and so he submitted mine, and I got this thing from them, and they were like, it's only to be used for operations expenses. And so my brain exploded because I was like, we don't have any operations expenses. Like, I run the fund. I don't take a salary. The website costs $300 a year and $12 for the domain name. So that was how we ended up advertising this year. And a lot of people have found the fund from it because I was like, well, I guess I'll just use this money to make the fund more well-known.
That's great. Have you seen like a large kind of explosion of people that you didn't know from finding you and using it?
Yeah, we basically divided our advertising up into two camps, like people that are places where we thought we could get more revenue that we could give out as grants, and people that we thought would be a good market for, they would like to do good but can't. And so we sort of broke our podcasting friends up into those two camps and asked them to advertise for us. And since then, like, reoccurring donations are like the backbone of the fund, because you're going to be able to have X number of dollars every month. And so we've seen our reoccurring donors have doubled, like 2.3% or 2.3 times over the number of reoccurring donors we have. And then the number of requests for grants has tripled. So we're pretty excited about it.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
Advertising works. Go team.
It's the reason for this episode too, because I am a listener to the Pillar podcast that JD Flynn and Ed Condon host, and I've heard your ad read on there, and I got to say I love the way that they do on-air ads because
So good.
they're so genuine about it, and they really praised your work, and it got me intrigued, and I went and learned about it, and like I said, it really matched something I've cared about for a long time with kind of the micro funding and stuff. And there is research on this that shows that some cases of whether it's homelessness or recidivism into institutions and things like that, that sometimes it really is the difference of the homeless guy that needs the coat so that he can go to a job interview and make a good first impression. And it doesn't take as much, I think, sometimes people would think it does to change somebody's whole course in life. They just kind of need that little boost, that little nudge, and sometimes it's that small thing that becomes the barrier. And what a shame when we could be effectively helping out if we kind of knew. So but then again, as you point out, there's people that maybe have the wherewithal, but they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the community, they don't know. So it's quite a striking model. And I'm gonna just here encourage our viewers and listeners, obviously we rely on donor support as well, and we want you to be helping us out. But I think a lot of us like to kind of spread around whatever charitable giving we do. And so I would encourage everyone to go to the Good Egg Fund and see, consider prayerfully, especially during the season of Lent, how you might be able to help out.
Yeah. One of the things you said, I always tell people that just somebody just noticing that you need help, even if they're not able to fulfill everything, just that notice can sometimes be what people need to know that they're important and that their struggle matters to somebody. So we've had people where they have these massive things to overcome, like, poverty and homelessness and unplanned pregnancies and things like that, and it's the request is, can I take them out to lunch and talk to them? And we're like, yeah, here's $75, go take them out to lunch and get it together. And the person that they took out to lunch will email us and be like, oh, thank you so much for giving them that grant, it was so kind of you. And that meant so much to me. One of my favorite stories that we had a single mother who had just gone into homelessness, and the Good Egg Fund provided her with a week in a hotel. We just paid 1 week's worth of cost for a hotel. And that was in the first year that we were formalized. So that was in 2020. And then in 2023, that person that we got the hotel for came back and donated $2,000 to the Good Egg Fund. Was that 2,000? It was north of 1,000. I don't want to be like giving crazy numbers, but it was a huge amount of money that she gave to the Good Egg Fund. And she was like, I just needed to get back on my feet. And it came, that was our first one to come full circle, where like we helped somebody and they came back and paid it back, which was awesome.
That's really beautiful. It's kind of a lovely mom insight too, in the best possible way. Cause I don't know, you see it firsthand in your kids. Like sometimes they just need a minute, and, if you can give that to them, then that's so helpful. And it's so cool that you're sort of helping to extend that into communities. That's great.
Yeah. There's a lot of people think that the internet is just full of awful people, and thanks to the Good Egg Fund, like I usually see the good. I usually see the good things that come out of the internet. I do a really good job of scrolling past things that are awful though. So there's that. But like, I get the opportunity to see the person that you're arguing with online is coming to me being like, hey, I know this guy who needs help. And it's so edifying.
And what I love about your model too is sort of the community-based, I don't want to say anonymity, because within your community, people know each other. But, if you go to your website, what you don't see, and there are Twitch streamers, there are YouTubers and TikTok people that do a similar thing in that they kind of raise money from their fans and followers, but it's essentially for content. They go and they give like $1,000 to a homeless person, but they're filming, and sometimes it's not even clear that they tell the homeless person that they're filming them, that it's for, and there's something just a little bit unseemly about that. And what I like about your model is that it's not trying to generate content. It's not for clickbait. It's it's quiet works of charity being done, and also in small ways. I love the fact that it's, a micro grant, $500 or less. There's, I think that there's just such a huge opportunity in our world for programs like this.
Yeah, we do like to ask people. I feel bad that it's like, I don't want to give anybody the wrong impression. We do ask people when they take a grant if they'd be willing to film themselves explaining what they did with the grant. But we specifically tell them never show the person that actually receives the grant, because we never want this person to feel like they need to come back and say thank you or anything like that, or to feel like they're being taken advantage of. So like when we, one of the first things that we ever did long before the actual Good Egg Fund, there was a prototype where my little son, when he was like 7 years old, said that for Christmas, instead of presents, he wanted to go give things out to people experiencing homelessness in our town in Indianapolis. And so we took this little video of all of our kids running around downtown and like packing the bags and stuff, but we made sure not to show anyone that received anything. And it helps people to be able to see, like, this is where your money goes when you give to the Good Egg Fund. But you're right, when you do it, I mean, like, the Good Egg Fund is not a YouTube channel. It doesn't have anything. It's not a content generating thing, but we do put out little videos sometimes on our Instagram or Twitter.
No, that's nice though. It gives it a certain purity that is lacking in other places. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes when we ask for the videos, they're like, oh, like, do you need me to do something fancy? I'm like, pick up cell phone, press record, look into face, like just 30 seconds. My name is Katie and I did this. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, apart from the Good Egg Fund, Katie, I do know that you have some other initiatives that you're involved in. You seem, I get tired just reading your resume. But tell us maybe about Frontiers of Faith, because that was one that kind of caught my eye, and I wondered what that's about.
Yeah, Frontiers of Faith is the podcast of the Pontifical Mission Societies. So out of just, somebody once told me that our God is wild, but he is not. No, what was it? It was, our God is good, but he is not tame. That's what it is. And last year, my life got really crazy. I ended up being in this room full of Catholic content creators, which, me being like a little Twitch streamer who doesn't make specifically Catholic content, I was like, what am I doing here? It was very strange. But while I was there, Inez San Martin, she's the communications director for the Pontifical Mission Societies, had asked a different influencer if they would be interested in going to India with them, just to like cover what the missions are doing in India. And that the person who was there that wasn't able to go was like, here, I'll give you Katie's information, see if you want to, if she wants to go. And they reached out to me, and I was like, they're never going to ask me, but then they did. And so I got to go with the Pontifical Mission Society to India last year and see the missions. And if you're ever disenchanted with the institutional church in America, just pack a bag and go to the missions. Just whatever you've got to do, become a missionary or just visit. But it's the purest version of the church, where people are out there helping and boots on the ground in ways that you just like. We've never seen poverty in the United States the way that it exists in some of the mission territories, and being able to see the way that people in the missions love Christ can just change your heart so much. And so while I was out there with them, they were like, hey, we'd like to do a podcast. Do you know anything about that? I was like, why, actually, I do. Because I had produced a podcast myself. And just like that, previously that year, I had produced my first podcast, and I was like, hey, I actually know how to do that now. And so I started doing Frontiers of Faith. And so we put out an episode every single week where we either talk to a missionary or we just look at the gospel through the lens of mission, like what it is to be a missionary through our baptismal call. So it's pretty cool. I love it.
That's amazing. Well, I noticed on the Good Egg Fund, you have a Mother Teresa quote front and center.
She's my girl. Don't you love her?
Yes.
Yeah. When I was out there, I was already a huge St. Teresa of Calcutta fan, and I got to represent the St. Teresa of Calcutta socks for the Sacrilegious March Madness that year. So I was very excited. Like, I took my socks with me to India and took pictures with them everywhere. I ended up accidentally giving them to a nun who didn't speak English, and she misunderstood why I was showing her my socks, and so now they're hers now. But it was just super, super fun. And when she said, go find your Calcutta wherever you are, that's what the Good Egg Fund is. And that's what I'm trying to do online and in all of our projects, is to build up communities of people who just want to support each other and let each other know that, you're not alone and that somebody cares.
Yeah. Well, she was so famous for just doing the good and then the money would come after.
Mm-hmm. Just,
And
it's fine. Figure it out.
Yeah, that's such it's a good vehicle because, if you see, like you said, if you see a need, but you can't do anything about it, this is sort of that bridge that can help you do something concrete. It's great.
That's the hope. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, the missions, especially Mother Teresa's exemplary work there, are another good reminder of kind of that missing element that I think is so often the case with philanthropy in the West, right? And Chesterton rails against this, right? Chesterton really did not like philanthropists because he said, like they're actually kind of misanthropists in a certain way, because they love this vague thing called mankind, but they don't love men, right? And his point was you need that personal connection. You need to look somebody in the eyes. And that was kind of what the missions do so well. It's what Mother Teresa did so well, was to, exercise that ministry of presence, to sit with someone and hold their hand, is sometimes what really makes the difference. I mean, you can buy them a new car, a new pair of shoes, whatever it happens to be, but there's something so much more meaningful when it's coming from a moment of personal encounter with a disciple of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, absolutely. We have this love of helping. What you're talking about is we love to help the poor as they exist in our mind, which is like a weird Dickens style poor person. And we don't like it when we encounter an actual person who's suffering, who doesn't smell delightful, and who, is stooped over, or, is diseased, things like that. We don't feel comfortable with that. And what I hope the Good Egg Fund is encouraging people to do is to get in there and get your hands dirty and actually see the actual poor, and don't turn up your nose because they don't smell the way that you want them to,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, over my shoulder, I have one of my heroes, Dorothy Day.
I saw
A
that.
little kind of icon of hers, and that was again something that she did in her ministry. There's a anecdote about Catherine Doherty, a servant of God. Catherine Doherty came down to visit the Catholic Worker House in New York, and she relates the story of how a woman came to the door, and Dorothy had forgotten that she was visiting, right? So Dorothy said, like, well, you can share my bed, right? So, which wasn't uncommon back then for, two women to do. And they shared a bed, but then there's this knock at the door, and there's this woman, and, you could kind of tell by looking at her that she probably had lice, and she, there were all kinds of things. And Dorothy said, oh, well, she can sleep with us, right, Catherine? And Catherine sort of like stuttered. She was like, oh, I don't know. that might not be a good idea. So Dorothy said, okay, no problem. She brought her in and made up a bed for her in the bathtub. And then, Catherine went to bed, and Dorothy's walking out, and she said, where are you going? She's like, well, I'll join her in the bathtub. And sleep with her there. And Catherine said something to the effect of, aren't you afraid? And Dorothy's answer was, how should I be afraid? I'm sleeping with my Lord. That was, she genuinely saw Christ in the other, in the suffering poor. And that's the element that you just don't get with anonymized donations. And that's why, again, I love that there's this $500 limit, because you can't just set up a program, with that amount of money. It has to be something more intimate and interactive. So,
Yeah. It's actually very much the point. Like we've had people reach out and they have these grand ideas, and I'm very glad that they have them, because Lord knows we need grand ideas somewhere in the world. But, when they're like, we want to start what was the one that somebody came to me with? It was they wanted to start a clothes washing, like a laundromat, but it was free for the homeless in their area, and all of these things. And I was like, that sounds awesome. It's just so out of scope. Like we don't, they were like, oh, there would be no one working there, so you would never know. Like it would be unembarrassing for the person who comes in to do it. I'm like, I see your heart. I see it. Just we're in different spots, and we want the person who's going to hold the hand. So, yeah. Dorothy Day, man. What a legend. What a legend.
Really, American legend too. Yeah. Yeah.
We had a friend on Frontiers of Faith once who worked at, are you familiar with Bethlehem Farm? Oh, okay. Nice. Joe knows. We had Miranda on. She was a summer servant at Bethlehem Farm for a while, and they are out in Appalachia in West Virginia, and they have an organic farm that they uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Raise food. They create food. They grow food. Grow is the word I wanted there. They have chickens too. So yeah, they produce food and they give it out to the people who are in food insecure situations. But then they also go out and they fix floors and they patch roofs and trailers and just spend time with people. And it's an amazing ministry that, is right here in the United States. If you're looking for mission territory, it's right there.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Well, certainly, there's no lack of opportunity, and I would just I hope that this episode for our listeners, for the viewers, kind of opens up your heart a little bit, but also just kind of opens up your mind, your attention to think differently, knowing that the Good Egg Fund exists, right? Think differently about situations as you encounter them, like Katie was saying, that you pass that one particular homeless person every day and think, well, you can, some people, I think it's a good recommendation. They keep, same as cash gift cards, like in their glove compartment, and, they'll try to hand things out like that. But, maybe there's a bigger impact that you could make. Maybe there's just seeing they could use a sleeping bag or something like that, that, maybe it'll just open up creativity and let the Holy Spirit work in the minds and hearts of those that are tuning in to see, like, oh, there's probably something I can do. I just didn't realize that there were
Just need to ask.
resources available. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. We took a group of kids to the National Catholic Youth Conference in Indianapolis this year. And one of the things that the Good Egg Fund did with our grant that we got from my husband's job was we gave out free samples of using the Good Egg Fund. So each of the kids in our parish youth group got a $15 gift card to like Subway, or just, I tried to find the healthiest options I could find, but it's, what are you going to do? And we told them, like, if you encounter somebody on the street while you're walking, that you have this to give to them, start a conversation, say hello. They're kids, so you don't want them to get too dangerous or anything like that. But then if at the end you didn't have anybody that you encountered, go back to school and take somebody out to lunch who's doing bad in school, or whose parents aren't talking to them, or who just deleted their Snapchat and needs to talk. It's options that are out there.
Yep. Yeah. And it's like, I don't know if it was Chesterton who has talked about telescopic philanthropy, and but it's essentially that it's better to just be with the person who needs you right in front of you as much as possible.
Yeah. Better for both parties involved too. I think that's the thing that also we forget, and I think the discomfort that one experiences, where we, I would be the last person to try to romanticize this. People sometimes accuse Chesterton of romanticizing the poor in that kind of Dickensian way, but he writes very realistically in some places about how poverty vitiates, right? How poverty can lead to vice, that they kind of go hand in hand. And so he speaks realistically about how, the poor can be rough around the edges. They can be not only just, physically sometimes, but also like coarseness of language and things like that. He wasn't Pollyanna about this stuff. But I think, if people do step out of their comfort zone, they'll realize that there is a reward in it for you, not just feeling better about yourself and all that kind of stuff, but also, it is a genuine encounter with Christ. That's he promises us this, and if we just approach it with the same fervor that we go and sit before His presence, say in the Blessed Sacrament, if we really take His word seriously in the Sermon on the Mount, that this is another way that we encounter Him, and that it is a true presence of Christ, not the sacramental presence, but a true presence, then what can't come of that? That's the possibilities are endless. So
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. When we were talking about being present with Christ in the Eucharist, and I had an opportunity to do an Instagram reel for the Eucharistic revival last year, and I had just come back from India, so I was talking about how to do adoration in my little reel. And one of the things that was like such a clear parallel from the missions is while we were in India, we would arrive at a parish or in a village or whatever, and they would always have chairs set up for us in the front of a room. And like there was this massive language barrier. They had no idea what we were talking about, but they just wanted to be near us and talk to us. And then, Indian people, they bow a lot and put their hands together, and they would often put their hands over top of ours. Like they just wanted to touch us and be in physical contact with us. And I thought that this, like, I'm a convert to Catholicism, so adoration was weird to me anyway. But like after experiencing the time with the missions and getting to be with Christ in that mission territory, it made so much sense. Like, oh, you just want to be in the same room as me and to be physically near me. Oh, I get it. So like once God grants you that vision in your heart of being able to see him in other people, a lot of other parts of the faith just start clicking. So even if they smell funny.
Well, and it's like you said, sometimes they just need to be seen. I mean, I don't know. I'm reading the book, The Body Keeps the Score right now, which is about psychology. Yeah. It's intense. But I'm at the part now where
you're taking breaks.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good.
My husband's like, you need to take a break. But I'm just at the point now where he's talking about the need to be seen and to know that you're seen, and how healing that can be, and how that can really be sort of an antidote to trauma. And, we don't know what lies in people's pasts, but I would assume a lot of people who end up in homeless situations, especially, or probably there's some trauma there. There's some trauma in lots of people's lives. But the point is, just giving that moment is so beautiful. And I love that part of your fund is to take, if someone needs to go take someone else to lunch and just like kind of pick them up. Like that's such a beautiful ministry. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Those are always some of my favorite requests. We get a lot of requests for car seats, but second to car seats is getting just to spend time with people. That's great. Like if you've ever been like a college kid who wanted to show love to somebody else, but you're like, I can't even take this person out to lunch. I can't even afford my lunch. Like I'm eating ramen. Like obviously I'm gonna buy you lunch and you're going to buy them lunch, and getting to pick up that tab is what you were talking about. Getting to experience what it is to help somebody else. It's great.
Lovely.
Yeah. Well, I think we're almost at time here, but this has been, I think, just a perfect episode for the season. As I mentioned, it is Lent right now. If you're tuning in somehow later in the year, or you discover this podcast, you can imagine that it's Lent. And
just
remember
pretend.
remember that almsgiving isn't just for the season of Lent, right? It's a part of the Christian life. So if you missed it, you could still participate somehow by figuring out a way to engage with the Good Egg Fund, or maybe some other way in, maybe just in your own neighborhood, and you have that immediate wherewithal that you can go and make a difference. It should be hopefully an inspiration for you. Katie, any last words of wisdom you'd like to share with our audience?
Oh, geez. I have absolutely no wisdom whatsoever. But I will tell you, my prayer every time I receive the Eucharist, every time that I'm in Mass, when you get back to your pew and you're sitting there by yourself and you're supposed to be praying, the thing that I always pray is, Lord, enter every cell of my being, that I might become more of you and less of me, and help me to see you and others and recognize you better than I recognize my own reflection. And so that is my hope, that other people, when they receive the Eucharist, we're in this year of Eucharistic revival, when you're in this time, you're becoming more and more Christ. What you eat is what you are. And so learn to recognize yourself in Christ, learn to recognize Christ in others. That's my hope for you. And I hope it's wise, but 50 years from now, we might find out I'm a heretic. So who knows? Here we go. Lord preserve me.
And all of us.
Indeed. Whenever somebody's like, hey, give us some advice, I'm like, oh no, there's going to be a millstone. I don't want to be involved.
Well, thank you for joining us. It really has been a lot of fun and very very, very good, I think, for us and for our audience.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for inviting me.
All right. Thank you, Katie. And thank you, Grettelyn, for helping co-host.
Always. Yeah.
And to all of you viewers and listeners, thank you for tuning in. As always, be sure to do all the things that help us reach more people, especially with news about good organizations like this, the Good Egg Fund. We want to get this out there, so you can help us do that by hitting the like button, maybe leaving a comment under the video on YouTube if that's where you're tuning in, giving us a review on any of the podcast platforms. That tells the algorithms that you like this sort of thing, and people who like similar things to you might also like it, so we'll get recommended. And this is information that probably other people in your life need, so you could just send this episode directly along to your family and friends so that they can become part of our conversation, because as we know, Chesterton is always better with friends. Until next time, God bless, and I hope you have a wonderful remainder of Lent.